The horizon beckons us forward, daring us to explore the unknown. Where possibility meets courage, where dreams defy limits. At TEDxWoodcreek High School, we stand at the edge of what is and envision what could be. Together, we journey beyond the familiar, towards a future full of infinite potential. Join us as we reach beyond the horizon. TEDxWoodcreek High School. The horizon awaits. Now, introducing your TEDxWoodcreek High School 2024 directors. Daniel Zeman and JC Huang.
Hi guys, hello everyone. Welcome to TEDxWoodcreek High School, The Horizon Awaits. I'm your director and licensee, Daniel Zeman.
And I'm JC Huang, your other director. We're beyond excited to bring TEDxWoodcreek High School to all of you tonight.
Before we begin, we'd like to go over a few basics. In case of an emergency exits are on the right and left. And then please go in between speakers if you need to use the bathroom.
Bathrooms are located on the left side of the lobby you just came in through.
This event is also being broadcasted and recorded and live streamed, so please be mindful of the cameras. And your coughs are internally on the internet.
As a last reminder, flash photography is not permitted. Feel free to take photos and videos from the audience, but please do not have your flash on and do not stand from your seat, as this will block other people's views.
Moving on, this event wouldn't be possible without our incredible sponsors. We'd like to thank Raising Cane's, Dutch Bros. Who? We like to rate Dutch Bros, Grow Factory,
Perfect Solutions Garage Door, Edward Stevens and Tucker Legal Counsel,
and Lions Club for sponsoring our event and helping bring this event to light.
Our theme for this year's event is The Horizon Awaits. Metaphorically, this theme embodies the possibilities and opportunities that await us. As we gaze upon the horizon, it's important to remember that the open sky is limitless. Each of us has the ability to reach up and grasp life's opportunities should we find the courage to do so. There's always something ahead of us. There's always an opportunity a few steps ahead. As we enter a unique night of inspiring TED Talks, it's important to never forget the horizon awaits.
This theme is designed to embrace the mission of TED and all TEDx's, to ignite conversation, spark conversation, and connect the vibrant minds of our community. This is where inspiration begins. Before our emcees come out and introduce our first speakers, please sit back and enjoy a short introduction video from TED. Thank you.
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this TEDxWoodcreek High School event. I am Landon Guild, one of the co-captains for the Woodcreek High School Speech and Debate team and a senior here at Woodcreek.
And I am Leon Goldman, an undergraduate freshman at UC Davis. I'm an alumni here from Woodcreek. I was also on their speech and debate team, and me and Landon are very excited to be your co-MCs for tonight.
Now, I'm sure you're wondering, why were me and Leon, a couple of teenagers, chosen to be your MCs tonight? And the simple answer is, we have no idea. But tonight is not about us. Tonight is about the speakers. So please follow Leon's demonstration, be polite and respectful, and make sure your phones are on silent.
Oh my God. Do not disturb, right there. Thank you.
Now please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Our first speaker tonight is Shivan Batra. Shivan Batra is a senior at Granite Bay High School, where he is very active in community service. He runs a nonprofit as the president of a nonprofit called Sneakers for Success, which is an organization that donates shoes to Latin America.
And now, despite running a nonprofit, Shivan still found time to represent the United States as a youth ambassador to Ecuador.
Wow, Shivan's got a lot of accomplishments. His speech tonight is about disagreement and discourse, and how it's very important to understand how to dissent civilly.
Shivan's speech shows us all that while you don't have to agree with someone, you must respect them in order to look towards the horizon.
It ties back to our theme perfectly tonight. The horizon awaits.
I mean, I guess? I mean, don't get me wrong, Shivan's speech is phenomenal. I've seen it. It is truly amazing. But what does the horizon even mean?
It's pretty cut and dry. I'm not really sure what you're talking about.
What do you mean cut and dry? I mean, seriously, what kind of back alley billboard was that found on? Seriously, I've seen more motivational quotes in an English classroom.
Hey, okay, JC and Daniel made that theme. They worked really hard. You know, I think it's genius, all right?
Well, yeah, everything's genius to someone with 2 IQ.
Okay, let's calm down, all right? I think our first speaker can solve this.
Fine.
Introducing Shivan Batra.
In a speech, agree to understand.
Okay.
Since the dawn of humanity, our society has been going through a multitude of disputes, from Israel-Palestine to pro-life versus pro-choice to Republican versus Democrat. But none of these come close to the more nuanced debate of our time. Is a taco a sandwich? No, it is not. It is a taco. Sorry. But despite that, this dispute actually went to court. Basically, there was this mall in Indiana that wanted to open up restaurants that only sold Subway-style sandwiches. So when a restaurant called The Famous Taco came along, there was a literal resistance movement. People were saying that tacos have no place in this mall. This dispute ended up going to court, and Allen County Superior Court judge stated that tacos are Mexican-style sandwiches, which is not true at all, but whatever. But our society doesn't just fight over smaller issues like whether a taco is a sandwich. We've spent hours fighting over more bigger issues. Like the organizer of this event, Daniel, almost swung at me because I said water wasn't wet. Because it's not, Daniel. But despite that, our society finds ourselves seriously fighting over a lot bigger issues, especially about politics. You see, growing up, I was always told that when in front of friends or family that I should never, and I really mean never, bring up politics. And I never understood why, and that was until I joined my high school speech and debate team. Now, if y'all don't know anybody in speech and debate, just think of someone who argues, like all the time, and then triple it, and you have your average speech and debate student. So when I went into the classroom after school one day, I was surprised to see this scene. 2 people completely screaming at each other using words I had never heard before. I honestly got scared and almost turned around and walked out. But an upperclassman assured me that this was just a normal day in speech and debate. But little did I know that they were arguing over Biden's new infrastructure plan. But that was my introduction to politics. I was fortunate enough to have an environment where I could express my thoughts and ideas freely and where people would listen to them and respect them. But more importantly, I had a space where I could learn about people's perspectives, backgrounds, and beliefs. But that isn't the case for many Americans today. You see, our country was founded on the idea of freedom of speech, basically meaning that discussions and debates have been a key driver for progress within our society. If we see something wrong, we talk about it, we protest about it, and we advocate for change. But with everything going on in our country, from the upcoming election to the crisis in Gaza, our nation has never been more divided, ultimately killing the space for discussions and discourse within our society. It seems that today we cannot have a proper conversation without disrespect, violence, or anger, which leads to the hyper-partisanship that we see within our society today. The fact that we're here is not because of our political beliefs by themselves, but more importantly, the us versus them ideology. For example, let's say I'm on this side of the stage because I have a more conservative view on a policy, and those liberals are over there because they have a more progressive view on a policy. Now, I don't want to talk to them, and they don't want to talk to me. We are separate and on different ends of the spectrum. And it seems that in American society, we are okay with this, and it makes sense, because humans inherently want to avoid disagreement. They want to avoid conflict, and we're more inclined to go towards things that we agree with, because we don't like being wrong. When was the last time someone came up to you, said you're wrong, incorrect, and everything you stand for is false? And you're like, I feel good about myself today, right? You don't. People want to find stuff that they agree with, so they will inherently go towards that end. And what we don't know is that when we stop talking and when we isolate ourselves from the other side, we become separated. Think of it like this. I'm sure everyone here has that one friend that we've grown distant with. And why is that the case? Because we stopped texting each other. We stopped calling each other over the phone. We stopped hanging out in person. We stopped talking. And the same goes for our politics today. When we stop talking to each other, we slowly isolate out the other side. And since we're only listening to stuff that we agree with, we slowly creep down the path of polarization. And before you know it, I'm all the way over here, while they're all the way over there. Us versus them. You see, as we slowly creep down the path of polarization, we tear our nation apart with it, bringing more violence, more hyper-partisanship in our society that we see today. The issue that we're talking about is that when we don't talk with one another and when we isolate ourselves and only listen to things that we agree with, we become more extreme and we throw our personal beliefs out the window and make it a personal battle. So when it's time to have a political conversation with the opposing side, we throw politics out the window. It becomes a personal battle. I mean, we all saw the Trump versus Biden debate. I learned more about golf than actual politics. And it's because we let our differences define us and our relationships with one another. Since we're unable to find a middle ground, and when we become so separated, this is what we see in terms of violence within our society today. The fact that we're here makes no sense at all. I mean, our country was founded on the ideas of discussions and debates. Take the American Revolution. Our country was founded because people like Thomas Jefferson, James Otis, James Madison thought of new controversial ideas. But at the same time, it was the common people of the American colonies that took the time to listen to these people and didn't shut down what they were trying to say. It was because these ideas were respected and valued that our country was born and why we are still a country today. But it seems that we have clearly drifted from that path. So in order to explore this, let's look at the lives of two people. We have John and James. So, hypothetically speaking, John and James have differing opinions on one of our society's most infamous disputes. I'm joking, not taco sandwich. Can we trust the government? So, for a little bit of background, John, he grew up in a household whose father was a diplomat. He worked for the government and represented them. He grew up constantly moving, and he had posters of his presidents in his room. So it's really safe to say what John's stance is on the government. Similarly, James also grew up constantly moving, but due to the government claiming his property, James feels that he has been heavily taxed and sees no actual progress being made. So when these two have a sit-down conversation and try to answer the question of can we trust the government, it's very easy for John to call James a paranoid lunatic, and for James to call John an idiotic sheep to the government. We find ourselves attacking our opponent rather than their actual argument. We often ask them, why on earth would you think that? And then go on to not answer that question. So in order to answer that question, we have to go back. And I mean way back to my guy Aristotle. Basically, he came up with the idea of reasoning, meaning that people can think things through based on their past perspectives, backgrounds, and ideas. So, if Aristotle were to look at John, he would say something like, since John grew up in an environment where he was always told that the government is good, and those beliefs were confirmed when he saw the government being good to him, he has no reason to believe why the government is bad. Aristotle didn't actually say that, but you get the idea. What John, James, and we don't understand is that people have different beliefs, people have different perspectives, and that is because people have different backgrounds. Not everybody's father was a diplomat. Not everybody grew up constantly moving due to their government claiming their property. Not everybody's heavily taxed. So what we need to understand is to get in the shoes of our opponent. Try to answer that question of why on earth would you think that? And only then will we be able to reach a compromise. Now, I'm not trying to say we should all think the same things, live the same lives, have the same beliefs, because diversity of thought is what makes our nation beautiful. But when we let our differences define us and our relationships with people, it turns into the us versus them battle. It turns into me not liking you just because you're over there. And that is where we see the violence and disrespect within our political conversations today. So, what can we do to actually move on? Well, I'm sure we're all familiar with the phrase, agree to disagree. Basically meaning, I think what I think and you think what you think. We agree to disagree on a topic. But instead of that, why can't we agree to understand? Why can't we agree to understand where our opponent is coming from and actually get a grasp of why they think what they think? Because when we agree to understand, we can come together from opposite poles and create an equator of compromise and look to find a middle ground. And then we'll realize just how little different we are despite our political beliefs. It's time that we stop letting our political beliefs and differences define our relationships with other people. And let's agree to understand. Because in a country that has never been more divided, it is so important that we come back together. And the perfect time for that is now. Thank you.
Well, I suppose just because we disagree doesn't mean you have 2 IQ.
Yeah, Shivan is truly right, especially now in our modern, often very controversial society. It's extremely important not to polarize yourself by dismissing who or what you disagree with. It's vital to keep engaging in civil conversation and agree to understand the other side. Now, can we agree to understand each other's perspective?
Yeah, we can agree to understand.
Bro, your handshake is floppier than a fish.
Yeah, I know. I actually have a lot of self-esteem issues I'd really like to fix, but I've never really known where to start. But I'm hoping our next speaker can help me with that.
Yes, he can. Our next speaker is Zach Coleman, the CEO of an athletic branding company, where he helps athletes build brands and mindsets based around a community. He helps them implement and internalize their true core values.
Zach Coleman is an incredibly talented businessman and entrepreneur, and today he plans to tell you all about how you can use simple principles of branding to help send yourself on a journey of self-improvement.
His speech is about how change is necessary to become a better person and strive to reach for the horizon.
So please welcome Zach Coleman in his speech, How Branding Develops You, to the stage.
What if branding wasn't just for corporations? What if it could be for all of us? Now, before you look at me as just some corporate guy up here, think about this for a sec. What if every single one of us could represent ourselves, just like those world-class brands represent on their beliefs, their message, and their values? Imagine if we could all represent ourselves in that same way on an individual level. From the outside, most people look at me and they see this motivated, driven guy, have a beautiful wife, 3 wonderful children. I moved up quite fast on that corporate ladder to now owning a successful business. You could say I have it all, but something was still missing and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I kept asking myself over and over again, is this really it for me? That train of thought led me down this path of personal growth and self-discovery that ultimately transformed my life, filled this internal void, and open myself up to new vulnerabilities. And as I was looking for answers, I realized something. As I was working on my external life, I was actually developing myself. With this in mind, I started to work on more personal goals. I allowed more people into my life, and I became more centered around my values. I was putting myself through a very similar process that I put my clients through. How ironic, right? I develop brands for a living, and now I was rebranding myself. Branding isn't just about that logo. It's not about that color scheme. It's not about throwing some random word up on a wall that sometimes means nothing at all. Branding is so much more than that. Branding is something that helped me develop myself on a much deeper level, who I am, who I wanted to be. And this had me thinking, what if I could help people grow personally through those same branding principles that I put my clients through? This led me to the 3 pillars of branding that, if utilized, we can all consider ourselves a brand: connection, confidence, and contribution. Connection is this journey of self-discovery. It's a continual path towards building meaningful relationships built around other people. And as I was going down my path to self-discovery, I had this resentment towards myself. I was spiraling into complete burnout. I wasn't motivated to do anything. All I could do, all I wanted to do was just sit behind the desk and go through those motions over and over again. I wasn't challenging myself. And this caused so much exhaustion. I was so disconnected from myself that I was having little to no conversations with my team, my family. And this disconnect was actually something that was holding me back. So how do we find this connection with ourselves if we don't even know that it's something that we're missing? Let me give you an example. In branding, we develop these things called brand values for our clients. Brand values are really just this representation of your team and the work culture you're developing. They're the bedrock on what keep a team motivated and connected with one another. And as I was going down my path of rediscovery, I had to reflect, find my personal values, allow them to be my guide towards those people I wanted to connect with. So I started a plan. What would make Zach Coleman happy? I looked at my past. I looked at those things that caused me exhaustion, and maybe some of those things I had a little bit of resistance towards. And I started to build my personal values around them, act upon them. I started to go on runs again. I started to go back to the gym like I used to love to do, and most importantly, I started to spend more time with my family. And the funny thing was, as I started to build this connection, I went from having little to no conversations with my team to building these collaborations of sorts that sparked new ideas together. We started to connect and come up with common goals, if it be with my team or with my family. You see, connection is key, whether you want to lead a team, build new friendships, or just be more present around your family. When was the last time you built a business plan around your life? You took your values and you engineered a strategy around them. And how far could we go if we lived our lives like those brands? Took our values and allowed those to be our moral compass towards that joy and connection we want in our lives. And as we start to build that connection and live by those values, we start to become more confident, which leads to that second branding principle, confidence, which is all about opening up more, being more vulnerable, and okay just making those mistakes. As I said, I was going down a path of self-discovery, but I still lack this confidence in myself to act upon my past failures, and everyone could see it. My friends and my family, they saw this lack of confidence in the way I was representing myself. I wasn't confident in my vision. I wasn't leading myself, so how could I lead others? I was so fixated on this need of perfectionism that I was hitting roadblock after roadblock in my life. I remember when my first child was born. I actually pushed my family out of the hospital faster because I had this important client meeting I had to get to. Looking back, I failed my family. I wasn't there for them when they needed me the most. What would happen if I were to own that mistake if I would have allowed myself to lead by example, learn from that past failure. My friends and my family would actually look up to me more for my ability to build confidence to accept that failure. I was no longer motivated by this need of feeling seen or heard, but molding this new definition of success around my rebrand, a refound vision of life, so to say. In 1943, there was this paper written called The Theory of Human Motivation by A.H. Maslow, which is now known as Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs, where he states our ability to act upon our failures is due to that limiting space and motivation to reach our vision. I mean, think about it for a sec. When faced with mistakes, large brands and their long-term vision act as their guide, pushing them beyond their failures. I mean, I'm standing up here with all of you today. This is going to be distributed amongst one of the most subscribed channels on the internet. 2 years ago, this wasn't even a part of my vision. We all have this ability to stand up for what we believe in, take risks, lead ourselves so that we can overcome those failures for what we want out of our vision. When was the last time you took your failures and created a vision for what you wanted out of your life? And how far could we go if we took those failures to reach that vision? Now, where confidence is all about acting upon those failures, contribution is the heart behind those actions. Remember that void, that resentment? Well, it was almost gone, but it was still lingering just a little bit. I wanted to help so many people, but I lacked my understanding of how I could help them because I first needed to understand with who I was, who I wanted to be. And how can you help others if you first aren't able to help yourself? It wasn't about the bank account. It wasn't about marketing to other people. It was about contributing to the greater good of who we all are. Thinking beyond ourselves so that we can make that impact on all of us. If we could see ourselves fulfilled and self-actualize, we could become stronger. We can strengthen the people around us. Sometimes we just forget why we're helping somebody. Sometimes we get so disconnected that we fall into this trap, go through those motions, sit behind a computer screen thinking that's what we're supposed to do. Humans aren't meant for that, for this constant cycle of feeling good enough, feeling wealthy enough, feeling, well, enough. I heard this story a few months back. There was this pizza joint out of Montgomery, Alabama that started this pay it forward type campaign where they would leave post-it notes for anyone who was in need of a free meal. A local citizen came up with this idea after he saw other cities doing something similar. This idea spread like wildfires. People from all over started to leave these post-it notes for anyone who was in need of a critical meal. And with the backing of that pizza joint, they all made it possible. It's proof that no matter how small you are, no matter how much money you have in your account, you don't have to be a large brand to make a difference. Even that smallest contribution can change the world around you. We don't have to rely on those large brands to make those contributions. We have the ability to help whoever we want to help, just like that citizen and pizza joint did out of Alabama. When was the last time you went with your heart first? Found that audience that you could contribute to? And how far could we go as a society if we relied on each other to make those differences? I want you to forget everything that you've heard about branding. Logo, color scheme, a random word up on a wall that sometimes can mean nothing at all, and think about what it can be. At its core, branding is really just when large corporations align their customers to their brand image, take those customers through multiple forms of communication. But just like those large brands, we can become lost, misaligned, stuck. Imagine what can happen if we all start to represent ourselves just like those large brands represent themselves. It doesn't matter if you're a brand owner, stay-at-home mom, leader of an organization, or you're just trying to lead yourself. We all have that ability to live out our values, take action, and make a difference, one person at a time. Connection, confidence, and contribution aren't just branding principles. They're stepping stones of growth for all of us that lead to those core pillars of who we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zach. That was a very inspiring speech. Now, his speech is very true. His basic branding principles that are used in business, it's a very unique way to approach helping and changing things about yourself. Everyone has things they'd like to improve, myself included, and using these basic branding principles, we can do so to achieve and strive for the horizon. Now, I do have to apologize. As you can see, I'm on stage alone. Seems that my co-MC has gone missing. I don't know where he is, but last I saw him, he was backstage whispering something to Daniel about nerds, I think. I'm a little scared now. I'm not sure what's going on. But I guess I'll have to get comfortable with doing this alone. But I mean, if anyone finds him,
Leon, go da-da-da-da-da.
What? Where? There? Where were you? There you are.
Doesn't matter, I was busy. Go da-da-da-da-da.
Da-da-da-da what?
Da-da-da-da-da.
Okay. Da-da-da-da-da.
Hello everyone, I am back. And as you could probably tell, I was having a few issues earlier with my self-esteem. But I have decided to use Zach's speech to help me rebrand myself. Which is why, now, I am Nerd Man! Yeah!
Nerd Man?
Yeah! Everyone's favorite superhero. You know, give it up if you've heard Nerd Man.
I think. Okay, I mean, our next speech is on the importance of history and how history.
Yeah. Nerdman's born for history. Yes!
Yeah, you're a nerd. Of course you were, buddy. Our next speaker is Katie Millsap, a junior here at Woodcreek High School. She plays on the basketball team and is on the speech and debate team as well.
She has seen extreme success in both, even qualifying to state in speech and debate. Today, Katie's speech is on the importance of the true definition of history and how being able to interpret it is so important to all of us.
To make a corny metaphor, as the sun moves across the horizon, your shadow moves behind you. To interpret and understand your shadow, which is your past, is crucial to... Am I getting beheaded? What is going on? It's crucial to understanding your future. So, please
Introducing Katie Millsap in her speech based on a true story.
What a wonderful performance by Katie. It's truly inspiring to see how we must understand the misconceptions of our past before we try to improve our future.
Now that we have addressed the misconceptions of our past, we can now move on to the future, which lies in a 20-minute break. So go out, check out the stands, get some food, and enjoy the next 20 minutes. But remember that there is no food or drink allowed inside of the theater. We'll see you back here in 20 minutes.
Thank you. And we are back. Thank you very much for the wait. So, I'm very proud of Landon. My social anxiety would have gone through the roof by now if I was wearing that goofy cape the whole time. So, I don't know how he does it. Good for him, I guess.
Social anxiety?
Social anxiety. Like what we're doing right now, like talking to fear, like the fear of talking to people and like in public.
Nerdman has no fear.
Okay, you know what? I think Nico Brown can explain social anxiety far better than I can. Nico Brown is a junior at Woodcreek High School and a published author of the fantasy novel When the Blossom Falls, with the sequel coming out soon this fall. He's also a 2024 alumni from the California State Summer School for the Arts, which is a very competitive visual and performing arts program where he was a musician and is still a musician.
Today, Nico Brown plans on sharing his own story about him overcoming his social anxiety in the hopes that it will help you all out in your own daily lives.
So please give a warm welcome to Nico Brown and his speech, The Courage to Walk Past Someone.
Seeing the lack of tutorials on how to walk past someone, I wanted to share a straightforward step-by-step description for those in need, like me. So whenever there's someone on the same sidewalk as me approaching, when there's no one else nearby, I keep my head down until they're in the socially acceptable sphere, then look up and smile, just slightly, don't overdo it. Say hello and blow past. That is how to walk past someone. Thank you. Have a good evening. No, I'm just kidding. There's more. What if you look up too late? What if they make eye contact before the socially acceptable distance has arrived? What do? Maybe make eye contact back, nod, walk a little faster to smooth it over, but that never works, does it? Even worse, imagine you're walking towards a door. Someone has a door open for you because they're a nice person, but they're doing you the world's greatest service because you're still 20 feet away. What do now? Smile, wave? First instinct might be to sprint, but that's approximately 6 seconds of running at the stranger, straight eye contact, running like a homicidal maniac. Maybe not. Definitely don't do that. I haven't done that. But what made that simple thing so nerve-wracking? Social anxiety is a prevalent issue for many and shows up in different ways, shapes, and forms. Blibbering out gibberish instead of hello while passing a stranger on the street is one of them. Though it's more common in individuals 13 to 18, anyone can experience it. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, 9.1% of teenagers experience social anxiety. That might not sound like much, but let's put that into perspective. Of the 21 million adolescents living in America, 9.1% is 2 million. I don't know if you know 2 million people. They certainly don't because they have social anxiety. And as with all things, the human mind is designed to prevent certain things in life can instantly lead to death. Hear me out. If you don't say hi properly to the person you're passing in the street, you are subject to death. We're given this anxiety to prevent us from making horrible mistakes, which will lead us down the road of no friends, no family, no social life, consequently death. We starve on the streets because we lack the above. I wish I was exaggerating, but this is where most human instinct originates from. And as extremist as it sounds, it works for most people. That's what makes them say hello and walk past. It's socially acceptable. But what about bad social anxiety? The type that makes you cross over to the other side of the street to avoid confrontation altogether. That in itself may seem like a simple fix, but that kind of inefficient problem solving can bleed over into other aspects of life. Say you are given the opportunity to, I don't know, speaking of TEDx talk, and you think to yourself, wow, that's great, and yet you say no. Imagine how many opportunities would pass you by in life. And opportunities aside, what about life events everyone has to experience? College interviews, for instance, voluntarily answering a question in class, or getting a job. I'll admit that I wanted to get a job over the summer, but spooked myself at the thought of, get this, social interaction. But in the future, the inevitable will come, and I will indeed have to get a job. It's that, or once again, starve in the streets and die. Missing opportunities can impair your life, preventing you from going higher up. The most stable careers are, at times, accessible only through college or higher education in general. One thing I've heard countless times in my life for getting opportunities is, it's not what you know, but who you know. In institutes like college, that's where you get to meet the who. And if we're naturally equipped with the best social networking in the entire animal kingdom, we should use it, even if it takes time to polish. So one day, I was walking out of school with a friend of mine while she was checking her hair in her phone camera, and I caught sight of myself looking awful in a window reflection. But I couldn't pull out my phone camera and make myself look a little better like she was doing. I was afraid. I feared public scrutiny. Eventually, I asked her, how do you do that? How did she do things with confidence? How did she keep her eyes forward? How were her shoulders relaxed as she went through a crowd of people, checking her hair on her phone camera? She told me, look at everyone else. They're all too concerned about themselves to judge you. I can't say this is a miracle fix, or that I was so mind blown it changed the course of my life, but she influenced how I thought from then on. Maybe I still can't check my hair on a Snapchat camera, but I can brave small things like ordering food for myself. She changed my mentality. We're all concerned about ourselves, but what you think could be shared with people right around you, and you wouldn't even know it. Social anxiety means different things for different people. For me, it was a complete and total lack of self-confidence in every aspect of the term. That was why I couldn't fix my hair on my phone camera, because I thought there was no fixing it anyway. That was why I walked with a slouch, because I didn't think holding myself high would make it any better. Figuring out the innate cause behind my behavior helped dig up the root of the problem. And I don't expect this talk to be a miracle cure-all either. Even after my friend's wisdom, it only started me on the path to work on myself. And for everyone who has never experienced social anxiety before, keep sharing your secrets. We need them. I need them. That aside, everyone has their own way of dampening that social anxiety. It's a kind of thing that never really goes away but changes with time, becomes bearable. Or for some people, like performers, it becomes the exhilarating adrenaline rush they look forward to. No path is the same, but at times, the beginning of it is. Raising your own voice has far more value than into just helping you function in the world. You can make your thoughts your reality, turn problems into solutions, and much more with words. Some people believe that one voice can't rise above the masses, but what you think, once again, can be shared to people right around you. How will you know if you don't say it? For instance, I had no idea how common social anxiety was until I spoke up about it. So from one person with social anxiety to a crowd with maybe a few, show of hands, 9.1%, anyone? Here's some final words of advice from me to you. For all those who think a million thoughts and say not a single word, begin with a mumble. For all those who rush over the words too quickly like I do, know that people will listen, even if you speak slowly. For all those who speak but aren't heard, raise your voice. The world listens as your stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Nico, for that very inspiring speech. Nico is right. Social anxiety in our modern society has essentially become an epidemic, as our lives have become chronically more and more online. Talking to new people, making new friends, even saying hi to a stranger has become quite literally a challenge. That's why Nico's advice is crucial and can aid anyone in overcoming their anxiety.
And you know what? I think I too learned something from Nico's speech. The emotions I was taught to repress.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, it's a good thing we heard the speech. So let's clap it up so much that Nico has a spike in his anxiety. You know what, Landon? I'm really proud of you. You've always been willing to be the butt of the joke, right? But I've never seen you go this far for a bit. He's been wearing this nerd man cape for like, I think, an hour now. For the record, he did not take this off during intermission. You guys saw him out there. But, you know, I'm proud of you for going outside of your comfort zone for that.
I mean, I appreciate the compliment, don't get me wrong, but this isn't a bit. I am, in fact, nerd man.
Oh, no.
But I do think Leon's comment ties perfectly into our next speech by Dr. Vidyani Surya Devara. Dr. Vidyani is an incredibly talented woman. She is a professor in the Department of Radiology at Stanford University, as well as the fact that she is a fellow at the Center for Global Health Innovation.
Her research portfolio is very impressive, including new imaging techniques to detect senescence and osteoarthritis,
crosstalk between bone and brain during Alzheimer's disease,
and new lifestyle interventions to prevent dementia. She also is published in academically famous journals and travels around the globe to give lectures at scientific conferences.
Dr. Vidyani is an incredibly accomplished woman, and her speech today is about how using her own story about her using her courage to step out of her comfort zone, and how it can hopefully help all of you. I mean, after all, she's a perfect embodiment of courage. She immigrated from southern India to the United States in order to pursue her career. So today, she's hoping that her unique circumstances can help all of you.
Please welcome Dr. Vidyani Surya Devara to the stage and her speech, Courage Over Comfort, Walking the Extra Mile.
Good evening. Have you ever wanted to do something beyond your league? Something beyond your capabilities? Something that necessitates a very big stretch? It could be a very ambitious project that you wanted to undertake, or a very advanced degree that you wanted to pursue, or even a fun travel place that you wanted to check off on your bucket list. We all have these fears and anxieties when we are stretching ourselves beyond our capabilities that we know we are capable of, but we don't know what we are really capable of. It could be our own self-doubt. It could be somebody telling us, you can't do this. Or we are telling ourselves, my life is perfectly all right now. Why do I need to stretch myself out of my comfort zone? I'll now share with you an anecdotal travel experience of mine where I pushed myself through discomfort to lead to a very beautiful experience. Few months ago, I was in Prague to give a talk at the World Molecular Imaging Congress. I was not only excited to be in a new country, but elated to be selected as a US ambassador at this prestigious conference. During the conference, I got a fleeting glimpse of Prague in between my commute from the airport to the conference venues. And in few days, it was time to return home. But as an ardent admirer of mountains and sunrises, I didn't want to leave without watching the sunrise at Bastei Bridge. As some of you might know, this is where the Chronicles of Narnia was shot. This place was 2 hours away from Prague with no public transport, and I had only 5 hours to do this. All the guided tours take about 10 hours, and there was no way I could postpone my flight because I was coming back to a very packed schedule. I was cautious about being a solo traveler and being a woman in a new country. I was anxious that I will definitely miss the flight. My brother warned me, if you go, you will miss the flight. As most of you might be guessing, that I made a wise choice of not taking on this adventure and return home safely. Even I thought so for a minute. But then, my inner voice urged me that I need to watch this sunrise and I can't go home without it. So, this is where I pushed myself to go through this discomfort and focused on how to execute it. I joined a local Facebook group and found a driver who would drive me early in the morning to make it by sunrise, and most importantly, to land me back at the airport back in time so that I don't miss my international flight. I woke up at 3 a.m. As excited I was to see this sunrise, there was also this anxiety in me. I was constantly checking my GPS in the car. What if the driver would kidnap me? It was not worth it for the sunrise. But luckily, nothing happened. And 2 hours later, I reached this place where Bastei Bridge was located. After a few steps of hiking there, I settled down to just in the direction of the sunrise to view this majestic sunrise from behind the rocks. In few minutes, the sun started coming up. I could see the sun from behind the rocks, and it was magical. At that moment, I thought, it was every bit of the apprehension that I went through for the last 3-4 days to get here to watch this beautiful sunrise. In few minutes, it was getting brighter and brighter, and the sun lit up the whole place. I could see this majestic green landscape mountains with houses embedded there and a whole layer of clouds beneath me. It was surreal to watch this view. It was one of the most beautiful views that I had ever seen throughout my travels across the world. At that moment, I paused and I thanked myself for pushing myself through this discomfort to avail myself to this beautiful experience. And on my way back, I was reflecting the 3 takeaways that enabled me this experience. The first one was to rather focus on my self-doubt and all the fears about what could go wrong. I rather simultaneously focused on how to plan and execute about how I get there. And the second takeaway was to curate the resources and people that are needed for us to attain our goals. And the third takeaway was to never be complacent with myself. I could have been content that I visited Prague and even ate my favorite dessert there. But I didn't want to miss the sunrise. And I was able to do it because of my perseverance. You might now be wondering, have I always been this adventurous in my life? it's fun for me, but it definitely creates panic for the people around me, as you might guess. I was born in South India, raised in a very humble upbringing in a family of no doctors or scientists. But even back then, when in India, engineering and medicine were the only two mainstreams to succeed in life, I was persistent that I want to pursue undergrad in BTech biotechnology. And thankfully, my parents supported this idea of mine against everybody's advice back then. And I graduated successfully from my undergrad in biotechnology while gaining deep knowledge in the field, while also honing my leadership skills through cultural activities. I was the student president of the cultural club without knowing how to even sing or dance. Who knows how I became the cultural club president. But it was very proud for me to see that the initiatives that I started back then are still being continued as the annual traditions of the university. And after 4 years, when I graduated, I took another huge leap in my life where I was totally uncomfortable and very scared and anxious because I was leaving my friends, peers, mentors to move to Chicago. I moved to the US when I was 21 years old in 2013 and landed there with just 2 bags and one hope to find a good research laboratory to pursue my biomedical research. I was so naive back then that I didn't even know that I have to take the appointment of a professor to meet with him. All I cared was, I need to find a good research lab. I landed in the US, dropped my bags, freshened up, went and knocked his door. I didn't find anything that day, but eventually I did find a research lab. Being a first-generation immigrant and coming into a field where there are no resources or limited opportunities, I not only had to create these resources and opportunities for myself, but also create the path that I traveled. And eventually, in 3.5 years, I graduated with my PhD in bioengineering from University of Illinois, Chicago, while serving as a student president for the entire graduate students in the university. This barely left any personal time for me, as you might have guessed, but I don't regret even a tiny bit of it, because I led myself through many series of discomforting events. I pushed myself hard to equip knowledge in 3 different research areas in that short amount of time. And while being the student president, I was the only student in the room full of deans and department chairs. You might now guess how intimidating that could be. But rather than walking away, I chose to sit through that discomfort and actually enrich myself with this experience. And this made me confident to dream for anything and attain any purpose that I want to in my life. I never knew that day that I would currently be at Stanford University doing research on projects related to developing new imaging tools to detect aging in osteoarthritis. This would not have happened if not for my mentors who saw that potential in me, which I didn't see in myself. I'm forever grateful to these mentors who have always nurtured my strengths and been a big support system in my life. It's very fulfilling to be able to pursue multiple research projects in biomedical research, one of which is elucidating the crosstalk between the brain and bone during Alzheimer's disease. It's very fulfilling to be able to develop region-specific interventions, lifestyle interventions to prevent dementia, and also publish the expert recommendations for aging along with all the citizen scientists in the US. And tying back my hobbies into work, recently I launched Stanford Heritage Dance Series, where we look at the intersection of how arts can benefit health. And all of this happened only because I kept pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I could have been very happy staying in Chicago because now that was my second home, where I had built an extensive network of family and friends. But I chose to leave that comfort zone. It was not an easy decision to leave everything and move to the West Coast and start all over again. But I'm very glad I did, because I would have missed all these career opportunities. You might have guessed that all of these come with many sleepless nights, many obstacles on the way, many roadblocks. And as most of you, when you're in a difficult situation, even I asked myself, why me, for all the challenges life threw at me? But I realized that going through each of these experiences not only made me stronger, but gave me confidence to tackle any challenge that life would throw at me. And from being a nerdy kid to now having an extensive set of friends in every city I'm traveling, and to pursue various hobbies like hiking, traveling around the world, shooting a Bharatanatyam video in every country I travel, it's nothing but been a holistic journey of life. And I'm very grateful for constantly building this discomfort muscle, which enables me to attain all my personal and professional goals that even I never dreamt of before. And I strongly believe that when our intentions are genuine and pure, the whole universe conspires to make it happen for us. And celebrating the tiny wins and victories on the way has just made me develop my discomfort muscle all over again. And this is because of these 3 lessons that I always adhere to. Rather than focusing on how difficult the problem is or how difficult the pursuit is, I always try to focus on planning and executing it by having short-term goals as well as long-term goals. And always I made sure I surround myself with the right people and mentors in my life, because that's what enabled me to get where I am today. And I'm very grateful to have these strong mentors and cheerleaders in my life. And finally, I'm never complacent with myself. Throughout my life, I've been my only competition, constantly trying to be a better version of myself, both in the personal and professional fronts compared to my previous years. And now, I leave you with these 3 takeaways. Whenever you want to pursue something outside your league, which is beyond your capabilities, and reach your stretch goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vidyani Surya Devara. That was a very inspiring speech. It's very impressive to see how someone who's clearly such an accomplished individual still understands that they have the opportunity to still go outside of their comfort zone and try new things. Now, speaking of comfort, I guess I'll have to get comfortable with being on stage alone, because it seems my partner Landon has disappeared again. Folks, next up on the entry list, we have a new entry I was just told about a couple of minutes ago. It's a little bit of a mystery under the name. It just says NM. I'm really not sure who it is, but let's give it up for our newest and most mysterious speaker, NM.
Weighing in at 150 pounds and 6'6". Don't fact check those. One's higher and one's lower. And while he's never given a speech before, this will be one for the history books, which he reads a lot of. So give it up for the man, the legend, Nerd Man! Brandon! Yes?
What are you doing?
Giving my speech, which is introducing the next speaker!
What?
You know, Leon, I really don't think we need you here for this, so... Okay. All right, on to the next speaker. Next up, we have Tanishta Mundal. Tanishta Mundal is an incredibly talented woman. She is the president... I'm a little out of breath up here. Tanishta Mundal is the president of her school's mock trial team. As well as the fact she's also... Whew, Nerdman is not designed for athleticism. Whew. She is also the former executive of the Transportation Commission for Roseville, California, as well as an executive commissioner for Placer County. Oh, you know what, Leon? I know I just broke your back and all, but can you get back up here and help me with this? She is just way too accomplished.
You've got to stop this act, dude. I mean, it's going too far. My back's not broken, thank God, though. Tanishta also has an internship at the Roseville Area Chamber of Commerce, where she helps conduct research to help strengthen the local job market. In her speech today, she discusses the concept of the KonMari method, which is an effective alternative to minimalism, and it talks about how some people simply have too much stuff. Like this guy over here.
Hey, I've got my cape, and that's all I need.
The KonMari method is an effective alternative to minimalism. And Tanishta talks about how in order to strive for the horizon, we must be willing to let go.
So now please welcome Tanishta Mundell to the stage. In her speech, A Minimalism That Works.
Have you ever wondered how big of a role your room has in your life? Second to school, we spend the most time in our rooms. We do our homework there, we procrastinate doing our homework there, we binge movies, we talk to our friends, listen to music, and so much more. For many of us, our rooms are our safe spaces, and we take the time to decorate it like so. If I walk into your room today, I'll likely see your passions and hobbies on display. Perhaps you have art pieces lining the wall, or a bookshelf bursting with books, or a closet filled with workout clothes, or a decked out computer where all your coding projects and video games are stored. No two rooms are alike because no two humans are alike. And yet, even though we spend so much time in our rooms, they get messy, fast. Perhaps you still have a pile of clothes by your bedside, waiting to get into a laundry hamper, or books that are out of their bookshelves and waiting to go back home, or a junk drawer that you let no one open, or a closet that looks more like a DIY obstacle course than a place to actually store your clothes in. Our three basic human needs are food, water, and shelter. Yet how does that shelter get messy so fast? Why is it that when we try to clean our rooms, the mess still keeps crawling back a few days later? And how do we fix it? It's a complicated question, and popular culture has tried to answer it in two main ways: minimalism and the KonMari method. Minimalism is a method about throwing things away little by little until you achieve a simple yet content lifestyle. When we talk about wanting to have a minimalist home, we pull up pictures of the same old white and black homes. Yes, these homes do offer a nice idea of what our rooms can look like, but the truth is, that version of minimalism simply doesn't cut it for most of us, because it doesn't quite capture the uniqueness each and every one of us carries. And yet, that minimalism is what we see the most on the internet. And we can't help but feel discouraged that this clean, spotless, empty version of what we are told can be achievable actually seems quite impossible. But there's a second solution to the mess in our rooms, which is not minimalism. It's called the KonMari method. Created by Japanese organizer Marie Kondo, the KonMari method is a life-changing tidying process where you tidy your room in categories, only keeping the items that bring you joy. You only have to go through the method once, and this method promises a permanently tidy room afterwards. With the KonMari method and minimalism, they are both solutions to the mess and the clutter in our rooms, but they differ significantly in approach and outcome. In my experience, minimalism tends not to be the answer because it involves taking our rich space and turning it into something more plain and impersonal. Yet, with the KonMari method, yes, the KonMari method's goal is for you to have an organized room. But its main goal, its main focus, is for you to have more space so you can build a life that you value, free from the clutter and the chaos. Its focus is your passions. With minimalism, which its goal is for you to throw things away little by little, the KonMari method's goal is worded a little bit differently. The KonMari method's goal is for you to actively choose the items that bring you joy. This language shift of actively choosing what to keep versus what can I throw away shifts to the KonMari method into something more positive. Framing our attitude towards the KonMari method as something that is possible, that is achievable, versus something that is drab and boring. And this language shift of actively choosing versus what can I throw away is just one of the many things that makes the KonMari method so magical. I mean, this method can change your life, and it's not all just about organizing. By choosing what I want and what brings me joy, I have become more confident in my ability to choose what I need and what I simply want. So now, if I'm tempted to buy something, I can confidently tell the difference between something that I just want on a whim versus something that I know that I will cherish and value for a long time. And it is this skill that has prevented my room from relapsing back into a mess, and has kept my room having more or less the same amount of items these past few years. But beyond this, the KonMari method can teach you lifelong lessons. And the biggest lesson that I've learned is the skill of learning to let go by knowing what sparks joy. But how does a method teach me that skill? Well, the KonMari method teaches us to keep what brings us happiness. The only criteria for knowing what to keep is to ask yourself, does this spark joy when you pick up an item? That term might sound vague. I know. Spark joy, what does that even mean? But think of it like this. It's when you pick up your most prized possession. For me, one of my favorite things is a book called The Thursday Murder Club. It's a book about a bunch of senior citizens who solve murders. It's chaotic, it's fun, but when I hold it in my hands, I feel this warm sense of happiness. I can feel the start of a smile, and the book feels a little bit lighter from the comfort that I get from it. Think about a possession that makes you feel that feeling. Perhaps it's an old book, an old t-shirt, an old photo album, or perhaps a stuffed animal. But when you hold that possession, that feeling that you get is a spark joy that I'm talking about. And remember how I said the KonMari method is magical? Well, this method aims for your entire room to be only filled with the items that make you feel that feeling. Now the first part, learning to let go. Learning to let go starts with knowing what brings joy. And knowing what that can feel like is a tough skill. That's why the KonMari method teaches us that skill gradually. We tidy first our clothes, the least emotion-y of items, and then we move on to our books, papers, mementos, and then we reach the final boss battle of our sentimental items. But by the time that we reach that final boss battle, you'll be a pro at deciphering what that feeling of spark joy is and not is for you. It will become instinctual. And you can't just speed run this process either. You can't just stick your head into your closet and just declare that, yes, I'm happy with all of this. That's not how that works. You can't just decide that everything in your room brings you joy without processing each item. You have to quite literally hold each item and ask yourself that question. If you boil it down, the KonMari method is picking up an item, asking yourself, does this spark joy? And if the answer is yes, put it away. Pick up another item, and repeat this process over and over and over again for each and every single item in your room. If the answer is no, discard the item that you're holding. Discard that item with a sense of gratitude. Because that item did serve you once, but now as it no longer brings you joy, it deserves to go to a different place. Perhaps that place is a donation pile or the trash can. But just know it's okay and completely expected that not every single thing in your room will make you feel that feeling. But just realize, by taking away the items that don't actually serve us, that action actually frees us. So by taking away, we are actually adding back value into our lives. By the end of the process, you'll probably ask yourself the question, does this spark joy, hundreds of times for each item that you have now kept and now have discarded. So back to the original question. How does the KonMari method actually teach me the skill of learning to let go by knowing what sparks joy? Well, since this method teaches us to keep what only brings us happiness, we shift our mindset towards tidying, towards a positive mindset. And we regard it with a sense of compelling, inspirational attitude towards tidying. And when we let go of the items that do not bring that sense of joy, we let go with a sense of gratitude without a sense of guilt. And doing this process hundreds of times ingrains in us that attitude of understanding that by letting go, that action does free us. That action doesn't take away anything from us, but actually only adds to our own self and our own identity. It adds back to who you are. After the process of keeping the items that have only brought you sense of joy, there's one last important step. You have to designate a spot for each type of item in your room, a kind of home for each thing, if you will. For example, once you have narrowed down your clump of pens to only the ones that bring you a sense of joy, put all of your pens in one place. That is the home for them. So if you take one out, you must put it back. That is its home. By doing this, we actually prevent the mess from coming back. It does sound a little crazy that by assigning a specific spot for each type of item in a room actually prevents the mess from coming back, but it's all a matter of mindset towards your possessions. I mean, after all, our stuff helps us, right? I can't walk outside without a shirt on, I can't write a letter without a pen, and I can't go to school without my shoes on. So it's only right that we put away the things that serve us back in its rightful place. It's kind of like we're respecting our items. It's a mental commitment. But actually, the whole KonMari method is one big commitment. But it's a commitment that can fundamentally change the course of your life. And it doesn't even cost a dime. You can start by setting a vision for how you want your room to look like. How do you want your daily routine and your future life to tie into the room that you want? By setting this inspirational vision, we actually strengthen our commitment to the tidying process. And this is a vision that you can start today. You can pick up your first item and ask yourself, does this spark joy tomorrow? Tidy for 30 minutes every single day. Perhaps you spend a few hours over the weekend. For me, this process from start to finish took about 6 months. But don't let that scare you away. In these few months, I tidied a lot on some days, and some days I just didn't feel like it. But those ups and downs are normal. Because by the end of this process, after I've chosen all the items that bring me joy, and assign them as home, my room has never resorted to mess back again. Yes, I do have to clean the dirt and the hair that comes up, but my room is tidied and no longer gets in that big mess. And as I have less stuff than I did before, my room is surrounded with items that only bring me a sense of joy. My room is a reflection of my identities and passions. And yes, as I grow, my passions will change and what I enjoy shifts, but the question of does this spark joy will always stay there. So even when I grow and even when my passions change, the possessions in my room will shift as who I am changes. After we do the KonMari method, our rooms will continuously and endlessly display our passions. In a way, our rooms can show us a little bit of who we are. I, for one, still do not know what my dream career will be. I am still young, but that being said, I know that the KonMari method has fundamentally changed the course of my life. My room is tidy and no longer gets in a mess. My room is a reflection of my passions and my identity, and my space makes me happy. I can spend my time and energy pouring into my most brilliant passions and dreams. And this reality can extend to you too. Dare to embrace the life-changing magic of the KonMari method and transform your space into one that makes you feel truly alive. Take the first step today. Your journey to a more purposeful and joyful life starts now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanishta, for that very creative perspective on organization. We all want to keep our living spaces tidy, and it's important to do so, but we must understand that doing so should not be forcing yourself to let go of everything, like Tanishta talks about, but instead keeping the things that spark joy. And this is very important because a clean and organized living space or room reflects a clean, organized, and efficient mind. So, Landon, what shenanigan do you have now? I'm sure you got something up your sleeve.
You know what, Leon? I'm done with shenanigans.
Really?
Yeah. Tanishta's speech really inspired me. And it made me realize I don't need this cape to be happy. So I'm going to be taking aspects of Zach's speech once again and combining them with aspects of Tanishta's. So I'm going to be rebranding myself once again as KonMari Man. Or, for short, just Merry Man. But Leon,
yes?
I don't need this anymore. Could you hold my mic?
Does anyone want the cape? Oh my God. That wasn't supposed to be that dramatic. That wasn't supposed to be that dramatic, but okay. So you're still not Landon? You're another superhero now?
Yeah, I'm Mary Man.
But why not Landon?
Because I'm still not happy with my original self, so still gotta rebrand and all that.
Okay. I think Rabbi Yossi can help you fix your problem.
What problem?
We will see you after our 15-minute break. Please go out, stretch your legs again. We will be back in 15 minutes.
Hello, everyone, and we are back. We hope you enjoyed the brief break between the speeches. Next up, we have Rabbi Yossi Kork. Rabbi Yossi Kork is an executive director at Chabad of Placer County. He has a distinguished background in rabbinical studies from industries in France, New York, Israel, and Montreal.
He was ordained in 2003 at the Central Yeshiva Tomchei Temamim in New York and also holds ordination for officiating religious weddings. He co-founded the first synagogue in South Placer and the Sacramento Jewish Academy.
Today, he plans on telling us all about the importance of remaining yourself against all odds, combining that with his own personal story about being a Jewish rabbi.
So please welcome Rabbi Yossi Kork and his speech, The Courage to Act Alone.
It was a Saturday morning, about 2 months ago, a hot summer morning, and I was taking my weekly 1.3-mile walk from my home in Roseville to our Jewish synagogue in Granite Bay. As I was walking down Douglas Boulevard, suddenly I heard someone from behind me calling for my attention. I turned around and I noticed a fellow walking towards me from a nearby parking lot. I waited for him, and as he approached me, he shared with me the following. He said, "I was driving down Douglas in the opposite direction that you're walking. But when I noticed you, I made a U-turn and came to this parking lot to be able to catch up with you. I just wanted to thank you for walking in our streets with such a public presence." You see, I was walking down Douglas Boulevard wearing my full Hasidic garb, not your typical scene in Roseville. And I felt it a privilege to be an inspiration for this fellow. This experience reminded me of a story I had read some time before. It was Hanukkah, 1931, in Kiel, Germany. Rachel Posner, wife of Rabbi Dr. Akiva Posner, took a photo of their Hanukkah menorah as it was sitting at the window ledge in their home, facing a building across the road that was decorated with Nazi flags. When the photo was printed, Rachel wrote on the back of the photo, in German, translated as follows: Hanukkah 1931. Death to Judah, says the flag. Judah will live forever, the light answers. Sometime soon after this, the family was forced to escape Germany, and they came to Israel in 1934. Some 80 years later, the descendants of Rachel and Akiva still continue to light each year on Hanukkah their candles using that very menorah that they brought with them from Kiel, Germany. The then popular and mighty Nazi party is gone, but the minority and persecuted Jewish nation is still alive and well. As a member of the Jewish faith, with a very long history of persecution and standing as a minority, I find it inspiring to hear stories such as this of Akiva and Rachel. It's a reminder that doing what's right, although it may not always be very popular, However, it is what makes the biggest difference. You may be wondering, though, where do people like Rachel and Akiva draw the strength to be able to stand and act alone in the face of such a mighty force? In 1951, Solomon Asch, an American-Polish psychologist, experimented by investigating the extent of which social pressure would influence an individual to conform to a majority view. He did this by experimenting with a line judgment task. Asch took a naive participant and placed him in a room with 7 Confederates. The Confederates agreed among themselves in advance what responses they would give when presented with the line task. The real participant was unaware of all of this, and he was led to believe that the Confederates were regular participants just as himself. The way this worked was that each participant had to state aloud which comparison line, A, B, or C, they thought was most like the target line. The answers were always very obvious. The real participant sat at the end of the row and provided his responses last. At the start of this test, all participants, including the Confederates, provided the correct answers. However, after several turns, the Confederates began to unanimously provide an incorrect answer. This study included 18 trials. The Confederates provided an incorrect answer for 12 of those trials, which they called the critical trials. Asch was interested to see whether the participant, the real participant, would conform with the majority view in the critical trials. Asch discovered that about 1/3 of the people who were placed in this situation went along with the clearly incorrect majority response in the critical trials. After the experiment, when these participants were interviewed, they shared that they didn't actually believe in their conforming answers. However, they went along with the majority for fear of being ridiculed. Now, if this was true in 1951, how much more so today, in a generation when social connections influence so much of our life? When many of us judge our success and worth by how many likes or follows we have. How can an individual have the courage to stand alone in the face of a large majority? Well, perhaps the following story can shed some light on this matter. The story is told of a man in his 30s who tragically jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. When investigations were complete, it was found in his bureau, back at his home, a note that read as follows: "I will walk to the bridge. If even one person will smile at me on the way, I will not jump." Now, this is a shocking story. Supposedly, if one person would have smiled at this individual, they could have saved his life. Now I ask you a question. Upon whom do you think lie the responsibility to smile at this individual and save his life? It's likely that this man walked past hundreds of people on that day while walking to the bridge. And from among all of those people he passed, who was responsible to share that life-saving smile with him? Imagine if you knew that your smile could have saved his life. Would you have hesitated for even a moment, regardless of how many people would go along with you? I'd suppose that most of us here would not hesitate. Oftentimes, we brush away life-changing opportunities by mistakenly assuming that the responsibility lies on others, perhaps on some who are more qualified, better trained, or more experienced. But if I were to realize that it is my responsibility and my opportunity to be able to make a difference, then I would be empowered to act as a leader and not just merely follow the masses. You may have heard the story, the incredible story of Oskar Schindler. Oskar was a German industrialist and a member of the Nazi Party who saved the lives of 1,200 Jews during the Holocaust by employing them in his factories. When Mr. Schindler took on this mission, it was not popular in the slightest bit. In fact, he had to risk a lot: his own safety, his financial security, and perhaps even his own life. Yet, he was inspired to act in a time that he felt this was his mission at a very critical moment in history. And he did this in an environment that did not support or condone his actions at all. As a Jew, I believe that if God created 8 billion humans on this planet, each uniquely different, with not a single one being identical to any other, that it must be because each of us humans have a unique mission and purpose which no one else can fill. It's not about being more or less qualified, but rather about recognizing and realizing that I have a unique mission and responsibility to leave a mark in this earth where no one else can. I further believe that these experiences that I chance upon aren't merely coincidental. Rather, they are destined. So if I encounter someone in need, it may just very well be that this is a sign that it's my mission and my duty to act on this. It may very well be that this is my moment, an opportunity to leave a lasting impression on this earth where no one else will. Next time, you're standing around with your friends and a group of people, and someone begins to mock someone in the group. Think of Oskar Schindler and the sacrifices that he endured to save other people's lives. Think of this man just 2 hours away from here that couldn't find anyone to save his life. And then think of yourself. I'm a member of a religion that has been persecuted and endured a lot of hardship. And yet, my fellow Jews choose to honor their ancestors and act alone to inspire hope for others. Will you stand by the side and just be another face in the blur of the world? Or will you choose to act against what's popular, to save the life of others, even if it requires stepping away from that crowd?
Wow, what a truly inspiring speech by Rabbi Yossi. His speech truly shows how important it is to continue to be oneself, even in the face of adversity. Because if you don't, you are simply a mask of your former self.
Was his message able to reach you, Landon?
You know what? I think it did.
Really?
I can go back to being who I truly am.
Yes, finally.
Nerd Man!
No, please, no, please.
I'm only joking. Okay. Nerd Man is unfortunately dead. my descendant is in the crowd, though. But I am back to being who I truly am, Landon. But now that we've gone through 3 seasons of character development in about 3 hours, it's time to move on to our 8th and final speaker.
Max Weinstein is our 8th and final speaker tonight. He is joining the University of Austin's inaugural class this fall as part of the STEM program. Max Weinstein is a very accomplished individual. He is an alumni from Granite Bay High School, where he was the president of the Emerald Brigade. He's also very involved in community service. However, today, Max Weinstein is talking about the American diet, as he is very interested in nutrition and research surrounding food science.
What you can eat can have an absolutely devastating effect on you.
Hey, Landon, did you not just hear the words that came out of your own mouth?
But I was hungry.
Hypocrisy, Landon, the hypocrisy of it.
Yeah. Can you throw that away backstage?
Yeah, I'll go get rid of this.
Thank you. Introducing our 8th and final speaker, Max Weinstein, in his speech, Putting the Data Back in Science.
On Tuesday, April 5th, 2005, my grandmother's life was on the line. It was springtime in New York City when my grandparents returned home from Israel. But upon stepping foot on the ground again, my grandmother's life was about to change forever. She could not walk more than a few steps before struggling to catch her breath. Presuming her fatigue was from a long day of travel, she didn't think anything of it. But as my grandparents exited the terminal, my grandmother's symptoms only worsened. At the same time, my uncle was waiting outside of the terminal to pick up my grandparents. When over an hour had passed, he knew something was wrong. When they finally made it outside, my grandmother's physical state told everything. At the doctor's office, my grandmother had no option but to wait. Upon evaluating the results, nothing showed any signs of concern. With one last test to check off the list, the doctor ordered an electrocardiogram. Known as an EKG in the medical world, it enables doctors to see a patient's pulse on paper. When the results arrived, the doctor realized the severity of the situation. My grandmother was showing signs of a heart attack. At the hospital, my grandmother had no option but to wait. When the cardiologist finally arrived, the doctor needed to assess my grandmother's heart. To do so, he performed an angiogram. During this procedure, patients receive a black dye in their bloodstream. Doctors then use special X-ray technology to assess blood flow throughout the body. Captured images allow doctors to detect any possible blockages throughout the arteries. In my grandmother's case, doctors uncovered nothing short of a miracle finding. My grandmother had 98% blockage in her LAD artery. She had to undergo emergency surgery immediately. During the operation, doctors employed a special device called an angioplasty stent. When placed in the obstructed artery, it expands like a balloon, allowing more room for blood flow. Well, it may have saved my grandmother's life then and there. It by no means made her bulletproof. Less than a year later, doctors uncovered a 75% blockage, this time in her right common carotid artery. After all the trauma my grandmother had been through, she was at a loss for words. She couldn't seem to understand what caused her heart disease to recur in such a short amount of time. After all, she received what many physicians consider to be life-saving treatment. Fast forward to 2021, my grandmother found herself in the emergency room. Before returning home, doctors ordered a series of tests to make sure she was healthy enough to do so. The results were beyond remarkable. My grandmother had not only stopped the progression of her heart disease, she had reversed it. This is my grandma at her grandson's high school graduation 19 years after she nearly lost her life to a heart attack. Thanks to a healthy diet, she's now 88 years young and continues to enjoy her 7 grandkids, including me. To understand how far we've come in the evolution of scientific research, we have to return to the summer of 1982. Yes, you heard me right, before over half of us were born yet, and when going viral just meant catching a cold. Renowned surgeon Dr. Dennis Burkett had set up a network of missionary medical tents throughout sub-Saharan Africa. A major turning point in the medical field, he was amazed when Ugandans exhibited very few diseases common in more developed countries. Later on, findings revealed that in the Ugandan population, heart disease, our nation's #1 killer, was virtually non-existent. So what were they doing that we weren't? Or rather, what were they not doing that we were? What may have been the key contributor to their health and longevity can largely be attributed to the food they were eating. With a diet centered around starchy fruits, vegetables, legumes, and grains, Ugandan households ate meat sparingly. When scientists assessed blood samples from the Ugandan population, cholesterol scores reflected that of a modern-day American following a plant-based dietary pattern. What happened next would completely change the trajectory of medicine for good. Or, at least you would think. On July 21st, 1990, Dr. Dean Ornish and colleagues published a landmark study in which they not only had stopped the progression of heart disease in patients, but for the first time ever, they had reversed it. And they had done so without any fancy drug or revolutionary operation. All it took was simple diet and lifestyle changes. As teens, we've been misled to believe that conditions like heart disease don't develop until we reach old age, but that doesn't seem to be the case. You see, when it comes to heart disease, we're not just dealing with the heart, but the cardiovascular system as a whole. Our arteries are the highway system by which oxygen and other vital nutrients are circulated from the heart to the rest of the body. Lining the arteries are these endothelial cells whose job is to keep an unobstructed path for blood flow. The issue is that with age and a poor diet, these cells weaken over time, resulting in heart disease. Back in the 60s, an examination of over 1,600 autopsies uncovered the presence of aortic fatty streaks, the first telltale sign of heart disease, in many children under age 3 and in all children over age 3. When scientists nearly doubled the sample size, they concluded that atherosclerosis, the buildup of plaque inside the arteries, was not only present in childhood, but grew in severity throughout the teenage and young adult stages of life. So the question is no longer one of prevention, it's about reversing the damage that's already been done. Can a healthy diet even do that? Well, when Dr. Esselstyn and colleagues went to test that, they were hoping at best to slow down the progression of the disease in patients. Yet the results surpassed all expectations. Not only had Dr. Esselstyn's team confirmed Dr. Ornish's findings, but in just 3 weeks, patients had opened up their arteries, restoring proper blood flow simply by following a plant-based diet. There's overwhelming evidence in some of the most prestigious medical journals in the world that we can change our destiny by adopting a healthy lifestyle. Yet, heart disease continues to claim the lives of nearly a quarter of all Americans. And it's not like this is anything new. In fact, for more than half a century, heart disease has consistently outperformed all other causes of American mortality. So it begs the question, why, if we've had access to this information for over 3 decades, have we not changed anything about how we approach disease? Why do we keep treating the symptoms instead of the underlying root cause? Why are we reacting to tragedy instead of proactively preventing disease in the first place? Why do we keep needlessly losing loved ones to a reversible condition? I mean, even my grandma was 1 beat away from becoming another statistic. While many factors may be outside one's reach, the one thing we can control is our habits. The Global Burden of Diseases study, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, found that the single greatest contributor to American death and mortality was the American diet. Even the American Cancer Society concluded that only 5 to 10% of all cancer can be attributed to genetic predisposition, meaning that over 90% of cancer prevention is within our control. So what type of food should we be eating to prevent the onset of cancer? Well, it just so happens to be the same and only diet that has ever been proven to reverse heart disease, a plant-centered one. The American Institute for Cancer Research now advises people to consume a diet centered around starchy fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, while avoiding the intake of ultra-processed foods, sugar-filled drinks, and animal products like processed and red meats. And they're not alone in these standards. Back in 2015, the World Health Organization not only classified red meat as a probable carcinogen, but identified processed meat as a class 1 carcinogen, the same classification assigned to smoking. Okay, but how do we isolate this to make sure that it's actually solving for something? Well, it's not just anecdotes, it's science. Women who adhere to a majority of these recommended guidelines experience a 51% decreased risk of breast cancer compared to women meeting only 0 to 2 recommendations. Which one offered the greatest protection, you might ask? It seemed to be the restriction of animal products. Even in cancer patients, adherence to the guidelines was not only associated with higher survival, but lower overall mortality. Okay, but wait a minute. How do we isolate plants to measure their cancer-protecting properties? Well, you isolate the one thing plants have that animal products don't, dietary fiber. When scientists put it to the test, they found that increasing the amount of dietary fiber in one's diet decreased the likelihood of all-cause mortality by 37% and breast cancer specific mortality by 28%. And it wasn't like it was a massive increase overnight. Only 5 grams of additional dietary fiber per day was associated with a 14% drop in all-cause mortality and a 9% drop in breast cancer specific mortality. So what can we start doing right now to take personal responsibility for our health? A good place to start is indoctrination. I mean education. Everything I've shared with you here today is simply a product of independent learning. Back in 2020, everyone's favorite year, my mom, who happens to be a healthcare professional, handed me a book called How Not to Diet. As funny as the title sounds, it completely transformed how I see the world today. It left me in absolute shock when the novel discussed the possibility that our generation just might be the first not to live as long as our parents. Written by Dr. Michael Greger, How Not to Diet is just shy of 5,000 citations. If you think that's impressive, his latest book, How Not to Age, contains a whopping 8,360 citations. And no, this isn't some online commercial show. In fact, everything he does goes to charity. Don't believe me? It's even listed on his public website, nutritionfacts.org. A nonprofit service by Dr. Greger, he posts new videos and articles daily on the latest in evidence-based nutrition. He argues that when making decisions as critical as life or death, we should always go straight to what the evidence illustrates is the best course of action. So whether it's something as simple as adding an apple a day, or making an effort to get outside instead of scrolling our devices, or even if it's to getting to bed on time and getting the proper rest our body needs, yes, I'm talking directly to all you AP students with this one, it's these small changes that make the biggest difference. We have the science to empower ourselves to make evidence-based health-conscious decisions. We have the tools necessary to rewrite our life's narrative, not just for ourselves, but for the ones we love the most. And it starts with putting the data back in science, one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Max, for that very engaging presentation. You know, it's very interesting to see a scientific-based approach about analyzing food. Remember, avoiding the harms of bad food is not about removing things from your diet, but instead choosing what you eat.
Now, we would like to thank you all for coming out tonight and witnessing our 8.5 speakers.
Was the half nerd man?
Well, yeah, of course. But, unfortunately, to quote Charlie Puth, we don't talk anymore
like we used to do.
Thank you again all for coming out tonight. Please, let's give our speakers one last round of applause.
All right, thank you everyone for coming out tonight and putting up with us for the last 3 hours. We have been your co-MCs.
Landon and Leon, also known as the team of Goldman and Guild, is our speech and debate competitors. Shivan was one of them. And now we're going to hand things off to JC and Daniel.
Thank you.
This was without a doubt an eventful night with our 8 wonderful speakers and an honorary mention to Nerdman. Before we end the night, Daniel and I would like to take a few minutes to say a few last things.
Again, we'd like to give a huge thanks to our sponsors for their generosity and support. To our speakers, thank you for not only working so hard to be here, but for spending months preparing to spread your message. And also having an immense courage to share meaningful messages in front of a big audience. These 8 incredible speakers have never failed to amaze us, and their hard work really paid off. Thank you to our MCs for being the comedic relief. Thank you for Mrs. Gonzalez and Mrs. Ronalter, our teacher advisors, for spending days helping us. And we'd like to thank Miss Elko and Miss Mars for supporting us on the way.
And last but not least, we'd like to bring up each of our committee members and thank them for doing such a wonderful job to help organize TEDxWoodcreek High School. Organizing an entirely student-run event is no easy feat, and it's thanks to these dedicated high schoolers working alongside us that this event was possible. Please refrain from applauding until the very end. If our committee could walk on stage when we call their name.
Thank you for Olivia Samoya
and Nick Sapp, our communications and sponsorship managers.
Thank you to Darcy Miller, our ticketing and registration manager.
Thank you to Emily Botwinick, our speaker assistant.
Thank you to Lindsay Steinke, our secretary.
Thank you for Noah Brandt and our tech leads for helping us with the tech.
Thank you to Caitlin Leck and Danica Tran, our volunteer coordinators.
Thank you for Hermione Huang, our photography lead, and thank you for her photography committee members, Vera, Haley.
Thank you to Isabel Pareda, our graphic designer.
Thank you to Jackie Cadiz, our stage manager.
These dedicated individuals are some of the most hardworking and kind people I've ever had the pleasure of working with, and I'm sure Daniel could say the same. Thank you so much for what each of you have done.
You'll notice the QR code on the projector behind us. If you could take the time to fill out a form to help us prepare better for next year so we know where we can improve and where we went well.
Speaking of which, TEDx Woodcreek High School will be held again in fall of next year. Make sure to stay updated on our social media, so our LinkedIn and our Instagram, to stay ready for next year.
We hope you had an incredible night. Take the time to really let these TED Talks sink in. Carry their messages with you in everything you do. Let these speeches change the way you perceive the world around you. For every step you take in the days forward, remember that the horizon awaits.
And in the days forward, also remember that this is where inspiration began. We hope you had a wonderful time. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, guys.